Hi, everybody. If the background looks a little different, it's because it's different. We moved. My wife and I moved this past weekend from our apartment in Brooklyn to a new place in Harlem. And it's a little kind of in between space, a little bit. The bedroom that we're going to move into, it's a long story. Anyway, we're in the basement right now. And hello from the basement, my underground bunker. Michael Miller is here. Oh, Ben is here. I'm going to answer your questions because that's what office hours is. But I wanted to try something a little different just to start today anyway, which is that I got I have some questions preloaded. One of my patrons on Guitar Tips Pro, his name is Dan Godfrey, sent in a few questions, and I thought I would dive into those. And of course, you can ask follow-up questions, and you can ask questions about anything else if you want to. So I'm gonna just start there. I hope you're all doing well, and I appreciate you being here. First one says, I don't know if you have any plans to do a video on augmented chords, their use, function, symmetry, and related scales. How about that? Are you all interested in augmented? It's a pretty distinctive sound. This is what augmented chords sound like. Michael, I just saw your question about Get Back. I'll get to that. So let me just explain briefly what augmented chords are, and then I'll talk about how they're used and what scales go with them and the symmetry and all that. So an augmented chord is a major triad with the fifth degree raised by a half step. So this is the upper part of an A major chord, like you might know that whole chord, but I'm just thinking about the triad here on the first three strings. So we need to know where is the fifth here, and then we'll raise it up. So as it turns out, this is root 3, 5. This is a root position, A major triad, A, C sharp, E. So we're going to sharp the E. We get E sharp. That's A augmented. So let's do it. That's root position triad. Let's do it with the first inversion triad. So I'll stay on the first three strings. This is the upper part of an E major chord. It's a first inversion E triad. It's got the third on the bottom, G sharp, fifth in the middle, root on top. So again, we need to raise the fifth. So that's B sharp, and that's E augmented. And now let's do one in second inversion. That's the fifth on the bottom. So that's our common D shape. D triad, D, F sharp, A is the fifth. It's on the bottom. We'll raise it up. So that's D augmented. So A augmented, E augmented, D augmented, right? So that's the structure of augmented triads. How do we use them? What are we going to do with these? Generally, they're used as a type of dominant chord when you've got the 5 chord going to the 1 chord, or some version of that, within a chord progression. So if I've got 1, 4, 5, say, well, let's use one of the shapes that we had. So let's say we're in the key of G and we want to go 1, 4, 5, and back to 1. So G, C, D, G. But we want a little more spice on that D chord, the 5 chord. We could use D augmented. So listen to that. It just gives a little extra spice without getting into some, altered dominant sound. There's sometimes confusion because when we use altered dominant sounds in jazz, that can include flat 9, sharp 9, flat 13, sharp 11. Really, any of the alterations, any combination of those could be part of the altered dominant sound. And in there is a flat 13, which seems like it's the same as the raised 5. But I think of that as a distinctive sound. Altered dominant has a lot of tension on it, whereas the augmented is just one specific tension, the sharp 5. And most of the time, that sharp 5 of the 5 chord is a half step to the third of the 1 chord. Of course, you could resolve to a minor chord, in which case then that doesn't happen. The fifth of that 5 chord just stays where it is and is the third of the 1 minor. So I'll do 1, 4, 5 in minor. Right? You've heard that kind of sound. So that's most commonly how augmented chords are used. Sometimes you hear it as an intro, like on a blues. So maybe the band just starts cold on a D augmented, and then the band comes in. Like Darling does that. Oh, darling. Right. So that's that sound. There's a Paul Simon song. I think it's called Honesty. It starts with that kind of chord. So that's the use. The symmetry of them is interesting because let's take that D augmented chord, D, F sharp, A sharp. If you invert that, in all 3 inversions, whether you've got the 5th on the bottom, the root on the bottom, or the 3rd on the bottom, notice my shape isn't changing. It's the same shape because the distance from the root to the 3rd is a major 3rd, and the distance from the 3rd to the 5th, or to the raised 5th, is a major 3rd, and the distance from the raised 5th back up to the root is a major 3rd again. It's essentially it's an octave divided into 3 equal parts. So it just keep going like that. So it's got this interesting symmetry to it, and scale-wise, it's most commonly associated with the whole tone scale, which is all whole steps. And something I think is interesting about that is that I was just talking about how it's built in major thirds. Those whole steps are going to cut each of those major thirds in half. So a major third is 2 whole steps. So now we've got this chord that moves in thirds and a scale that moves in whole steps. So you could do something like this. So I'm playing the scale using every note of the D whole tone scale to connect these inversions. And if your ear is open to it, you could then even really just move these chords in whole steps, because these notes from this is D augmented, this is E augmented. E augmented also is built on notes from D whole tone. So the D whole tone scale is D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, or C, and back to D. So we've really got two whole tone, two augmented chords. So D augmented, E augmented, D augmented, E augmented, D augmented, E augmented, D augmented, E augmented. So there's even more symmetry if your ear is open. And that also means like you could play a D9 chord and put a sharp 5 on top, and that would be part of whole tone. Or you could do that up here, D7, that's the third, that's the sharp 5, and the 9 on top. That's a neat sound. So you hear that in early jazz, like in the 30s, you could hear a lot of that kind of sound in Ellington. Duke Ellington's music has those kinds of chords, borrowing from whole tone. I could say more, but that seems like plenty. If you have any follow up questions about augmented chords and whole tones, post, just ask away, and I'll do my best to answer. Okay, I'm gonna answer a question here from Michael Miller, and then I'll get back to some questions from Dan. Have you seen Get Back yet? If so, do you have any initial thoughts on the band and their process in the studio? Yeah, Michael, I've watched all of episode 1 and about half of episode 2. It's fascinating to me to see the songwriting process. It seems to take Paul McCartney a couple of weeks to figure out Get Back, what the lyrics are. He's trying Sweet Loretta Marsh, Sweet Loretta. He keeps but he's not working it out on paper. He just sings it, and he keeps kind of like running up against the wall by singing the part that he wants to get to, and just seeing what comes out, and just trying over and over again. Of course, we all know how Get Back actually goes. We know where he's going to land, but it's fascinating to me to see that in the beginning, it's just like, sweet Loretta, and then something about Arizona, and then that leads them to Tucson, Arizona, and JoJo Jackson. We lose his last name completely when the song ends. I mean, when Get Back finally settles into the song that we know in the future from what they're working on. It's not JoJo anybody. It's just JoJo was a man. So that's really interesting to me, because the way that I write songs is not like that at all. I do everything on paper and get a whole lyric together before I even pick up the guitar. Seems like McCartney's thing is to he's certain of the melody, and he's certain of the rhythm of the melody, and even some of the vowel sounds. And does he want it to sound like A or I or E? He has an idea, but the specific words aren't there yet. I haven't written that way that I can recall. So that's fascinating to me. Also, Paul McCartney wanting to tell people what to play. There's a lot of that in episode 1. Maybe they all do that. Maybe on a John song, he tells people what to play. Maybe George does that too. But at least from what I've seen, Paul is the most specific that way. Like, hey, on my song, I want you to do this thing. And I had thought that maybe they all just came up with their own parts, and maybe earlier in the Beatles that it was more like that. But at this point in 1969, it's more like each guy writing his own song and telling the other guys what he wants them to do, arrangement wise and part wise. I love how fluid the band is, that they can all switch. We think of them as Paul McCartney on bass, and then John and George on guitars, and Ringo on drums, but they all kind of switch around as needed when they're trying to get a live take, when they're trying to get something that they could actually just do on stage without overdubs. They can all move around. That was interesting to me, and they all seem to know how to do that, and they sing harmony so well together. Uh, I don't know exactly what I thought the process was, but I'll just say that, yeah, I'm surprised by the process. And also, I listened to that record, the Let It Be record, so much, and didn't realize to what extent it was meant. It was part of this film that they were making, and there was going to be a live. I didn't have all the information really about what the Let It Be album was. I just thought of those as some songs that they played in the studio and on the roof. And so now, to zoom out and see that there's a film director there, and to also watch Glenn John's participation and George Martin's participation, and then other people kind of popping in and out. Yeah, really interesting to get to see all this stuff. Um, all right, let's see. Oh yeah, the augmented chord, and I'm so tired. Uh, I'm so tired. There it is. Yeah, that's a great use of augmented. Another thing that people sometimes do with augmented is it could be part of a what's called a line cliche, where you have D regular with a regular fifth, then sharp five, then sixth. Like that's a thing. Um, Sometimes it goes all the way up to the flat seven, and then to the like that. And you could do that also with a minor chord. That kind of movement is sometimes called a line cliche. It's not really different chords, it's just one chord with this moving line that changes the quality of the harmony, but it's still a D minor. Call that D minor sharp five, D minor six, D minor sharp five, or D minor augmented, D minor sixth. And that leads me to the next question from Dan Godfrey, who says, sometimes I get confused regarding sixths. If the sixth degree of the A natural minor scale is F natural, why does an A minor sixth have an F sharp instead? Anybody else confused by that? Oh, hey, George, welcome. Anybody else confused by why in the key of A minor, the scale is A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. So the sixth degree of that is F. But if a chord chart says A minor sixth, we don't play F, we play F sharp. So that's A minor sixth, not that. Why is that? That's a really good question, Dan. When we say C major, we get this. When we say C major 7, we use the 7th degree from the C major scale. When we say C minor 7th, we don't use that natural, or the B natural. We use B flat. So from C minor 7th, I think we assume that we're talking about the C minor scale, the C natural minor scale. So we've got that B flat in there, so that's C minor 7th. But when we say C minor 6th, it seems more like we're using the 6th from Dorian, or the 6th from melodic minor. It's totally confusing, and I don't have a good answer. I just know that it is always that way. Anytime you see a chord chart and it says A minor 6, they always mean F sharp. So I think it's just one of those things that you have to not get too caught up about and just memorize the formula. Minor 6th has 1, minor 3, 5, and 6. So as a chord, it could be like that. You could play it as an arpeggio. Yeah, it's a cool sound. We don't use it a lot these days. Things tend to be either just triadic or with a minor 7 a lot of the time. And this sound, it's so beautiful, but I can't think of a recent popular song that has that sound in it. Sorry, I don't have a better answer. I would just file that under "it is what it is," memorize the formula, and there you go. Garrison Boyd says, Adam, I've been re-listening to Nora Jones' Come Away With Me album, and I just can't get over your playing on it. I remember growing up listening to it with my mom, and now it has new meaning. Oh, that's so super sweet, Garrison. Yeah, I don't know quite what to say, but it's a beautiful record. I didn't listen to it for a long time. Not that I didn't want to listen to it, but when we made the record, it was at the time a project I was working on. I didn't have any idea, of course, that it was going to be a huge record, as it turned out to be. So when it was done, I listened to it a little bit, and then we started touring, and then because we hadn't really toured before the record as a band, and then the songs started to take some new directions on stage, on tour. Nothing radically different, but the songs started to develop more of a different character on the road, which you can see if you watch the Live in New Orleans video, or the next video, that DVD that came out. Maybe it's available somewhere on streaming. I don't know. That we recorded in Nashville at the Ryman Auditorium. I think that's just the nature of things. Some artists really like to perform the records just as they are. Other artists just want to play the songs and aren't too tied to what they did in the studio. And Nora was, I think, pretty open to just letting the songs be as they were. Letting the songs be what they could be on the road, and not trying to duplicate the record exactly. But I hope we never got too far away from the sounds of the record, or the energy of the record, because it sounds good and people loved it. And so we tried to honor that. People would come out to hear the music. We're trying to slap anybody in the face with a radical reimagining of Come Away With Me. But only to say that was a situation where once we started touring, we weren't going back and listening to the record over and over again. We just kept moving. And so now when I go back to it, it still sounds really fresh to me, because I haven't listened to it over and over again, and I haven't listened to it much in the last 5 or 10 years at all. But when I do hear it, Uh, I appreciate it a lot. It, yeah, it's a beautiful record. Nora is great on it. The band is really great. Arif Mardin, the producer, added a lot of nice touches, as did Jay Newland, who mixed it and also was one of the producers, as did Craig Street, who was involved early on, uh, but was not in the studio towards the end when I was working on the record. Um, oh, Garrison, I'm really glad you like the Kibby Dango record and the Rich Hinman versus Adam Levy record. Goodrich is a particular favorite of mine too. Wow, you've done a deep dive. You've checked out a lot of cool music. Um, yeah, wow. Uh, well, good to meet you here. I'm gonna get another question. Well, Dan Godfrey asked these three questions. I talked about minor sixth. I wasn't very helpful there. I talked about augmented. Hopefully, there's some stuff there you can use. And the last thing is, he says, this last thought is a bit jumbled, but I'll try. I think you alluded to some of it in your video. What scales should I play? That's a recent video that I did here. When I have my analysis hat on, this is my analysis hat, the aim is sometimes to reduce what's happening to a concept that's easy to digest. For example, the guitar player might be using fourths, or the chord progression is a blues. But sometimes this analysis takes away or doesn't include the magic that I might be hearing or feeling. It feels too reductive, mathematical, or even soulless. Sometimes I catch myself going, oh, it's just a blues. And then I hate the use of the word just. A blues can be so many things. Is the remedy to balance analysis with more playing to connect with the actual music? Or is there an attitude or mindset you have to avoid this feeling? Yeah. Okay, so that was kind of a jumbly question, but I know what he means. Yeah, as a teacher, I've seen this kind of three-phase development in a lot of young players. And it goes something like this, is that, when you first learn about, we'll just say with blues, because the blues could really be for almost anybody, whether you play jazz or rock or country, everybody's got some blues. Let's talk about blues. So when you start out, you learn the pentatonic scale. And you don't really worry that that might play over a major chord and the scale is minor. It doesn't matter. Just play on through. And you learn some licks. I don't know why I just quoted Stairway to Heaven, but you know what I mean. You learn some licks. And you're not thinking about theory at all. Either it just feels good in your hand, or you heard somebody else do it and it sounded cool, or wherever licks and stuff come from. And in doing that, you're working on articulation and shape and phrasing, whether you really lean into the beat or lay back, whether certain notes pop out when you're bending, when you're not bending. And that's great, because all of that stuff matters just as much as scales and scale chord relationships. There's so much that you could get into without understanding or thinking about theory at all. And then, so that's phase one. It's kind of the ignorance. Ignorance is bliss. And then the next phase is you get a teacher or you go to school and they say, oh, if you're playing blues, you got to watch these guide tones, because when it goes to the four chord, on the one chord you might have a major third, and then when it goes to the four chord, that what was the major third, you want to make it minor. That now becomes part of the four chord. So you have these guide tone lines. So you might play this on the first measure, and then when it goes to the four chord, You want to outline that by hitting this note, and then back to the 1. Now we're going to go to the 4 chord. So we want to bring out this F sharp, which we haven't really used yet. So that's going to help the listener know, like, oh yeah, that's the 4 chord. And then we go back to the 1. And then on the 5, these guide tones go up to here. We've got the 3rd and the 7th is when I say guide tones, I'm talking about the 3rd and the 7th of these dominant chords. So 3rd and 7 of A, 3rd and 7 of D, 3rd and 7 of E. These are flat 7ths, I should say. So these are the guide tones. So you could improvise. Augmented chord form. So I'm using guide tone lines to help define the chord changes more. But when you first learn how to do that, it can feel a little bookish, like kind of by the book. It's not very musical, and you might forget all the stuff that you first learned when you were just innocent and just playing that minor pentatonic scale over everything. So you have to apply all the stuff you learned about phrasing and dynamics and articulation and time and all that stuff. You need to be able to play guide tone driven stuff with all of that same stuff that you have been working on, because otherwise you've taken like 1 step forward but 2 steps back. So you have to bring all that together, and then that becomes integrated. And then, so that's the second kind of phase of development that I see in students. And then the third phase is where you have all that stuff and you've integrated it all, but then you transcend all of it, and you're just hearing phrases, and you're not, like, the chord changes are happening in your mind. You can hear that they're happening, but you don't have to play them on the guitar literally. You can sort of add another, as the harmony is changing in your imagination or in your inner ear, you then can layer stuff on top of it that is informed by the guide tones and the chord changes, but doesn't necessarily contain those notes for the listener to hear. That's really the third phase. So my friend Rich Hinman recently recommended an album to me. It's an album I'd heard a little bit of before, but I went back to it. It's Duke Ellington, the great pianist, arranger, band leader, composer, and Johnny Hodges, who was an alto saxophonist, frequently in Ellington's band. They made a record called Back to Back, and all of the tunes on there are blues. And in particular, there's a song on there called "Loveless Love." So you need to look for Duke Ellington, Johnny Hodges, an album called Back to Back, and a tune called, "Loveless Love." And the way that Duke Ellington solos on that is so, I just explained 3 phases of development. He's at, level 99 out of 3. He's already exponentially farther down the road, because his playing is informed by so much that goes beyond even what we think of as jazz. So that would be a good record to listen to kind of just free your ears up a little bit. But as far as a mindset to get into, or how to get yourself in that mindset. I think you need to practice thinking about other things besides the theory and any kind of thing like that. Like practice thinking about a color like red. Like I'm gonna think A blues, and I'm gonna just try to play really red. I don't know how I'm gonna do it. But I'm gonna try 2, 3, 4. I don't know, something about these two notes a whole step apart feel kind of red to me. Now I'm going to try to play uh, something softer, like kind of like a soft yellow. I don't know what that'll be like, but I'll try it. 2, 3, 4. So I don't know. Some other harmony came up for me there. I was trying not to play typical blues vocabulary, but just think about colors. You could think about moods: happy, sad. Uh, those are obvious ones, but anything. Just make a list of moods, of 10 moods, and then practice playing each one of those. I find that to be a good way to get out of the whole thing of scales and modes and theory. Another thing that's useful is just to not listen to yourself. Just listen to what somebody else is doing, the drummer or the bass player or the piano player, if there is one, or the other guitar player, or um, and just try to have a musical conversation with them. Get involved in what they're doing rather than just getting involved in what you're doing. That can be helpful. And um, I don't know. That's the stuff that's worked for me. Okay. Oh gosh, a whole bunch of questions just pouring in. Mm, Luke Scotton says, "Hey Adam, since you spoke about I'm so tired, do you ever use arranging tricks in your own music like Lennon does? They're making the first chord descend so it sounds like the tape is slowing down." I've never thought of it quite that way. Um, that's a really interesting question. Hmm. Well, I've never done that particular uh, thing for that particular effect. Um, ah, wow, you stumped me. I'm trying to think of things I've done that were kind of arranging tricks in. Well, I have a song called um, "I Wish I Could Change Your Mind," and it's in C, and then the bridge goes to a different key. And in most songs that are in the jazz model that are trying to sound like a song from a Broadway show from the 30s or 40s or something, uh, you it's not uncommon for the bridge to go someplace far away from the key. Here, I'll show you that. So I can't change the course of a wandering stream. I can't tell the stars not to shine. I can't stop the world, augmented chord, from spinning around. But I wish I could change your mind. I can't stop the swallows returning in springtime. The train on the Wichita line. I can't stop the lightning from striking the ground, but I wish I could change your mind. Once upon a time, you said you would be mine as long as the sky hung above. It's still not just the same. So, darling, please explain what has become of our love. I can't stop the church bells from chiming on Sunday. I can't change the water to wine. I can't stop these teardrops that fall from my eyes, but I wish I could change your mind. I can't stop these teardrops that fall from my eyes, but I wish I could change your mind. Anyway, that song, normally in the bridge of a song like that, you'd want to go back to the original key you started in, which is in this case C. But I set it up in a way that it didn't do that. It actually modulates a half step so that when you come out of the bridge at the end of the song, you go up a half step from C to D flat. It's subtle, but I think it has an effect. I wasn't looking for it to seem like the tape sped up, but just maybe that the emotion was ratcheted up a little bit, that last verse. Other arranging tricks, just leaving space for stuff to happen. So if I'm singing down low, maybe I'll play the guitar up high. If I'm singing up high, I might play the guitar down low. If the vocal is really kinetic, I might simplify the guitar part. If the guitar part is really kinetic, I might try to write a song where the words aren't just more held out notes and move more slowly. Uh, just basically not trying to get two camels to thread the needle at the same time. Is that a thing? I don't even know if that's a thing. But I hope you know what I mean. Just common sense stuff. I use capos in that way. I use alternate tunings in that way. Just trying to create an atmosphere that lets the words get across and lets the vocal uh, be clear. I'm not a great singer, so sometimes people tell me they like my singing because they can understand all the words. I don't think it's because I'm particularly skilled at singing. I think it has more to do with my skills as an accompanist, really. So that's how I think of it. Hey, Taylor Hatch. When it comes to musical mastery, there are cerebral components, or analytical and whimsical, creative and more freedom. How do you balance the two when you write music? Uh, I don't think about it that much in that way. I mean, that is probably happening all the time behind the scenes. If I catch myself being too analytical, I'll try to give myself an assignment that can't be really done analytically, that has to rely more on feelings or uh, stuff like that, and vice versa. But the analytical stuff is useful for me if I paint myself into a corner and uh, I get to a point in the song where I can't figure out what comes next. And if I try for a while with intuition and nothing comes, I can always turn to the analytical side to kind of, it's like finding an escape route. Or sometimes the analytical stuff I use more just to look at a batch of songs. If I'm working on making a record and I'm writing a bunch of songs, I might notice, like, oh yeah, I'm using analyzing my own songs. I might notice, oh, I'm using kind of the same tricks over and over again. I better either use some other tricks or just stop using tricks. um, so it helps not so much in the moment of writing one song, but in looking at a group of songs for a concert performance or an album or something. That's more when that hat comes on. When I'm writing a song, generally, I'm not thinking too analytically. Though, as I've talked about here and elsewhere, I do sometimes think about the structure of a song before I write it, like how many verses will there be? Also, how many lines per verse? How many lines per verse? How many lines will there be in each verse section or each chorus section? And then where are the rhymes? Is it A, B, A, B, or A, A, B, A, or stuff like that? And I do that not to be analytical, but just to give myself a framework in which I can do creative stuff. Otherwise, it's just a blank page, and I find that really intimidating. So I sometimes will create uh, limitations or obstacle courses types of things using theoretical ideas, and then try to make myself just be as playful as I can in solving those puzzles. Hope that makes sense. Connell Rainey says, "Hey Adam, when you made the Kibby Dango album, did you create specific parts for each of you, or were a lot of the parts improvised? The playing is so fluid between you and Mason Stoops; it's amazing." Um, we no, we didn't talk much or plan much our guitar parts for that. Um, what we did do is we played every week at this coffee shop in Pasadena, and so a lot of the stuff that feels like a worked out part wasn't worked out in the studio. It just came from playing together week after week, uh, and trying stuff, and hopefully remembering the stuff that worked best and letting go of the stuff that didn't work. So that was a case of of that. It's been interesting watching the Get Back documentary. It seems like McCartney wants to think about the parts, or maybe he doesn't want to think about the parts, but has the parts in his mind. Maybe they just come to him that way. So he tells people, "Here, play this part this way, play that part that way." And um, some of the other guys seem to just want to play and let stuff happen more naturally. But both ways have worked for me at different times. I don't think there's a magic formula that always works. But in that case of Kibi Dango, that was very much a product of playing together regularly. Evan Sakes, what a great name. Evan Sakes, AT, are you in Atlanta? Maybe you are. Hey, Adam, new subscriber here. The minor sixth ascending arpeggio you just played always brings to mind the intro of Autumn Leaves. Oh, yeah, that I know what you mean. Yeah, right. That's maybe best. I can't say it's the best example, but it's certainly a powerful example of that sound. Yeah. If you don't, for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, there's a recording on the Cannonball Adderley record called, I think it's called Something Else. Is that the record that has that on that, or is it on a Miles Davis record? Now I can't remember. I'm sure Evan Sakes will correct me, or one of you will. But it's that arrangement, and yeah, what a great mood. It's mood. Minor sixth chords are just moody. Yeah, love that. Oh, thanks for the love on the song. Thanks, John. Thanks, Luke. Taylor says, thanks, Adam. Knowing that you have this character with the integrity, what seems like tenderness in your playing, what helps keep you rooted in music without feeling like you're going off the rails? Yeah, okay. Thank you, Stephen McClure. It is Something Else under Cannonball Adderley's name, right? What keeps me rooted in the music? Listening. Trying not to let my brain drive the music or let my ego drive the music. It still happens to me all the time. I fail at this over and over again, but sometimes I get in the right zone or the right headspace or whatever you want to call it, and then then I could just listen to the music and react to the music, and that's where I want to be. I said this a few minutes ago. I'll say it again. Sometimes it takes listening to somebody else. Listen to what the drummer is doing, or listen to what the singer is doing. Even if the singer is you, it's sometimes you might just be so focused on playing the guitar that you forget that you're singing. So listen to the singer, listen to the drummer, listen to what other people are doing. Just try to remember what's important in music, and it's not scales. Scales are not what's important in music. Is there one more question? I've got a private lesson to get to on the hour, so I don't want to cut it too close. If there's maybe one more quick question, I'll try to answer it. Anybody? Petrus Nord says, hi, do you usually come up with things to think about when soloing, like the example with colors? Or do you maybe think of a musician you like? Yeah, that's a good idea. Think about a musician that you like. Think about a person that you like, even if they're not a musician, and try to think what their character is, how they might play. Really, think about almost anything except scales and arpeggios and all that stuff. You've had plenty of time to think about that stuff in the practice room, but on stage or in a recording studio, try to just pay attention to what's happening. Of course, that makes it seem like everything is reactive. If you're just paying attention, you're kind of waiting for something to happen and then reacting. thinking of a color or a musician or a vegetable or whatever can help you be more proactive. So it could just depend on the song, what mood you're, what, I mean, what you're trying to get across. On a gig, you might have a few guitar solos on a gig, and you don't just want to play the same stuff over and over again. So I use these kind of devices to trick myself into not playing the same solo over and over again. Uh, it's it, it's almost like in how in the game charades, in like you can't say what the word is, but you can try to express it through your actions, your body language. it, I think improvising is a bit like that. You have to start with an idea in your mind and then express it without just blurting it out. You don't want to just say red, or you don't want to just say Jim Hall, but you want to keep that in there and see if people can guess. They may guess wrong, and that's fine because they're going to project their own whatever into what you're doing. Uh, oh, George Harvey has a question. That's a good quick question. When you loan someone's guitar for a length of time, do you have it set up to your liking? Usually, yes, I do. Right now, I have this Paisley Telecaster that you might have seen that I'm borrowing from my friend, and it's actually at the shop right now. I didn't have it set up. I did put the strings I like on it, but it needed a setup, and I'm not real good at that. So, yes, the answer generally is yes. I'll stop here. Just a quick plug for my Patreon channel. If I know a lot of you here are already there, but you can check it out if you're not already a subscriber. It's Guitar Tips Pro. You can either just go to guitartipspro.com or go to Patreon and look for me there. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. I'll be back next Tuesday with another Office Hours Hour.